Well, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. Thanks for joining us. In case you don't know what's going on, Rec Poker is a group of fantastically enthusiastic and fun-loving recreational poker players. We have fun, we study together, we play together, we celebrate together, we get better together. We do it all mostly for free at rec.poker. In fact, most of what we do is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, which is why we depend on the support of folks like our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. So thank you to them for making all this possible. And thank you to the other members of the Wrecking Crew. My name's Jim Reed. I'm Bluffsterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter, while we still have Twitter. And I am one of the Wrecking Crew members, one of the folks that make all the magic happen here at Rec Poker. If you want to find out more about me or the other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can head on over to rec.poker/crew. But you can also listen up because you're going to meet a few of them here on the show tonight right now.
Well, I'm Chris Jones, and I'm not sure we have Twitter anymore anyway because we have this X thing. But you can find me on. Yeah, I don't know what it is anymore. That's why I switched over to Threads. You can find me 5v5 on Threads or 5x5 in the PokerStars home game.
I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Rabman50 everywhere.
I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on X at Taylor_Moss. I don't know. I can't say that with a straight face just yet. Or in the Rec Poker home game, I'm Gopher Boy TJM.
Fantastic. And this is the forums edition of the Rec Poker Podcast. And so typically the chats edition, which comes out every week, features an interview with a guest, someone who's interesting in the world of poker. On the forums editions, we tend to get into the strategy. And that's what we're going to be doing here tonight with a hand that Chris Jones brought. I see we're getting joined by premium member Eric Anderson. One of the perks of being a premium member is that you get to come join the show whenever you like. Eric, I see you're just connecting here, so thanks for joining. If you want to tune in, if you want to share your insights later, feel free to unmute. But otherwise, we'll just keep an eye on the chat. Chris, you said you had a hand that, interestingly enough, only had 1-5 in it, but you decided to play it anyway, and now we're going to talk about it here on the show. I turn it over to you, sir. Why don't you get into, since you started opening your range, to include hands that only have 1-5 in them. How's that been going for you?
Yeah, I do play a few other hands. It's not just my range isn't just like one spot on the grid, but yeah. So this is we are deep in a tournament, and I've looked this spot up, but I haven't quite run it for all the ICM implications, and I'm wondering how that changes our approach. It's also a blind versus blind spot, which I often find just to be one of the harder spots to figure out in a lot of ways. So there's 30 left in this tournament. There's $50,000 up top. So we would like to win it. It would be great.
That'd be great.
Spoiler alert, we didn't win it. So that's unfortunate. But we're sitting decently stacked, kind of middle of the pack. We've got 30 big blinds in the small blind. It folds to us, and our opponent is the big blind. They have 26 big blinds, so we cover them. There's only one shorter stack at our table. The rest of everyone at the table is either between 20 and 38 big blinds. There's a few very short stacks in the tournament, but mostly people are in this sort of like 15 to 30 range. There's a couple of big stacks as well. So that's kind of the stage that we're at in the tournament. Any other questions before I get into the hand?
No, nice work so far.
Okay. So we are holding the 5 of clubs and the 7 of clubs. It has folded to us in the small blind. Again, we're sitting and we cover the player next to us, but not by much. I elect to open this hand to 3 big blinds. I usually like a bigger sizing, but I'm thinking with the ICM implications and the shorter stacks that we can shrink that 3 big blinds is still a very effective, even though we're going to be out of position, it's a very effective way to put pressure on an opponent but not risk as much of our stack. So that's part of why I did that there. Yes, Jim.
Well, so I think you sound as though like maybe you think that it should be like 3.5 or something like that. But I think like you're probably 2xing off the button at that stack depth. So I think the small blind open size should really just be a function of what would you be opening in late position, and then just bump it up a blind or something like that. So I think 3 makes you're adding a lot of fold equity with 3 big blinds there. So I don't think that's anything to be worried about. Taylor, you look like you might have something to add.
Yeah, I think there's like a meta thing about this. Like 3.5, in my opinion, gets a lot more folds than 3. And as crazy as it sounds, like it's half of a big blind, but like I feel like it makes a lot of like actual progress in terms of like how much is your opponent going to fold. So like if I'm going to raise here, I do like going to like 3.5, even potentially like 4 if you really want to get crazy. But like given our stack size at 30, I'm maybe not going 4. But like I really like a 3.5 sizing here. And it's very much like a meta type of thing where I think people are going to get more folds.
Yep.
However, with this hand specifically, I really like limping. That would be my initial like read. Like if you would have got said 7-5 offsuit, like I'm like, okay, yeah, go 3.5 here and like just hope that they fold and move on with your life. But with 7-5 suited, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, how can I get to a flop and then like try and play this?
The only other thing I get, so I have, I'm just looking at this right now. I have 200 hands on my opponent. They have a 3-bet number at 13.3. And they are quite an aggressive player, I would say. So one of the things that the reason I often would limp this hand, quite frankly, but this could just get stuffed back in my face as well, seeing those numbers there. But I do think there is something to playing against aggressive players, to not showing that, like when you limp against an aggressive player, I think they are more likely to come at you with something even bigger than 3.5. So it's just that was what in the moment, that's what I was thinking. But I do generally like a limp in this spot against an unknown. But anyway, I think the juice of this hand gets even. So whatever I did pre-flop, I opened to 3. And I think that there could be some mistakes there. And my opponent calls. So we go to a flop. Again, we have 5 of clubs, 7 of clubs. And the flop is the Jack of spades, the 9 of spades, and the 6 of clubs. And it's on us because we are in the small blind. Should I tell you what I did, or do you want to give me some thoughts?
I don't know. Maybe tell us what you did, because there's a lot that you could do here, right?
Yeah,
like you don't really hit. You've got the gut shot.
So I bet a 2.25 big blinds into this spot. And one of the things that I was thinking about because of is again, I feel like in these sort of like starting to ratchet up ICM, leverage is sort of starting to be a big deal, that smaller bets accomplish what bigger bets used to. When I look this spot up, I looked this spot up earlier today from a pure chippy V spot. The solver, if you're just in pure chippy V land, the solver loves a big bet here, actually. In game, I did a small bet, and I think I still would, given the ICM implications, but I am curious what others think, or if you even like a check here sometimes.
Was it Jack 9-6 two-tone?
Yeah, there's 2 spades, the Jack of spades, the 9 of spades, and the 6 of clubs. The pot, Eric asked in the chat, is 7 big blinds. So
yeah, so it's about a third or so.
Yeah, right.
Because in a like that feels like one of those flops where we say this is a dynamic flop. We should be betting a larger size in a vacuum. And then the question is, in this crazy game of poker, all these other factors that are available to us, like ICM pressure and the fact that it's blind versus blind, what does that do to that kind of default position of betting bigger on boards like this? So I get why the solver is saying that, which makes sense in a vacuum, but I wonder if there is something else to it. Rob, what's on your mind?
You have 5-7 of spades?
Of clubs.
5-7 of clubs. Backdoor clubs in the gutter.
And the gutter.
Did you consider checking with the intention of check raising?
I did. I considered checking with the intention of check raising or check folding. I don't think I like check calling. So I was either going to bet or check raise or check fold. I think all of those are potentially reasonable options here.
The obviously the big blind's going to have a huge range. They're going to have a whole ton of hands. Most of them are going to miss this flop. You actually connected pretty well with this flop with your specific holdings. So I think, if you were getting spicy, I think you could definitely check and then check raise this. And if you do get called, and let's say you check raise and you get 3-bet, you can just get out of the hand. If you do get called, now you're looking for any club, any 4, any 8, obviously. So there's a lot of cards that are going to help your hand and allow you to go ahead and bet out on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't hit any of those cards, you can just say, "Okay, I'm done. I made my stand. It didn't work out for me, but it's an opportunity to maybe take the pot down right now with a less than stellar holding, even though you did connect with the board pretty well."
To me, the question that I think Rob just really hit the nail on the head here for is, when are we going to take this pot away? I think we can do it with a bigger bet on the flop or with a check raise on the flop. But the nice thing about the small bet here is that it continues this, like we can represent a lot of big hands on future streets that would be betting a draw, that would be betting I think it gives us the ability to take it away on a future street instead, depending on how our opponent responds. And it still has some fold equity. Like Rob also says, they're going to be folding a lot of hands that are better than 7 high to this bet size. So I see the attraction to that as well.
Yeah. And we really have to be aware, there's 30 left in the tournament at this point. We're getting to crunch time as it gets here. So taking some high variance routes can, be a little bit concerning. And honestly, if it wasn't late stages of the tournament, I'd be like, nah, don't do 2.25 big blinds here, because you're not going to accomplish much. You're only going to get called by their draws and their made hands, and all their draws beat you and all their made hands beat you. So what are you really trying to do later on in this hand? But you can get people to play relatively fit or fold in some of these spots.
Mm-hmm.
You really be honest with yourself. What are you trying to get to fold in this specific hand? You're trying to get them to fold queen nothing, king nothing, the king fours, and that's what you're going for. And be honest with yourself about that, because they're not going to fold, some straight draws. They're not going to fold flush draws. They're not going to fold essentially any pair. They're probably not even folding ace high. So you're going for that specific part of their range. Mm-hmm. And do you think you can get that to fold for 2.25? And is that the, option you want to take? If that's the case, go for it. But, yeah, I mean, checking doesn't seem all that bad either. If it goes check, I'm fine with it. But a lot of the times on turns, you're just going to get a dud for your equity as well. And you're just going to have to give up. you can get spicy and go for the check raise route. Like check calling does not feel good to me. I think everyone's kind of like hitting the nail on the head with that one. And even check folding really isn't all that bad. I think Rob said like, oh, you got a good flop for your hand. I don't know. I don't really think this is all that great to have a gut shot, and a gut shot that like really connects with other draws that your opponent might have in some of those situations. Like I'm going to be a bit wary. And plus you can't really hit a spade in terms of your draw because that hits their draws a little bit better too. So like I'm generally like not all that enthused about this.
Yep. I agree with that too. Well, we bet and villain calls. And what's the spiciest turn card in the deck?
The 8 of spades.
8 of spades.
Eight of spades.
How about the
10 of spades?
How about one that doesn't give us much in terms of value? We're still 7 high. It's the 4 of clubs.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like it though. I like it. That's a good card.
Yeah. So the board is again, we have 5, 7 of clubs. The board is now Jack of spades, 9 of spades, 6 of clubs, 4 of clubs. We now have an open-ender and an open-ended straight flush draw, but we're still holding 7 high. We've been called in 2 spots, pre-flop and now on the flop. There's 11.5 bigs in the pot, and we're playing about 21 effective at this point. I think I've got 24 behind. I think I covered them by 3. This is actually one of these spots where like I struggle sometimes figuring, okay, I've gained equity here. I still have 7 high. We're in this high leverage ICM spot. This would be a clear, to me, double barrel big spot in a non sort of like ICM leverage spot. What are your thoughts about? Should I tell you what I did, or do you want to tell me what your thoughts are?
No, let's share our thoughts. Let's share our thoughts first, because this is I think this is a spot that gets me in trouble all the time, where I've picked up equity, but I still don't have any showdown value, and I'm like hardwired to get all my chips in the middle when that happens, because like this is like the best bluffing opportunity I'm ever gonna have. I want what I would love to happen is to check for our opponent to bet and for us to be able to shove the rest of our chips in. But I'm not sure that's a good idea. It's just what I want to do. I wonder if it like, I don't know. What do you guys think in moments like this? Because you could just realize your equity. Like you could just bet small or check and see if you hit a club or make the straight. It's going to be harder to get paid when you do. And you're out of position, which is going to make that more difficult as well. But when I find these high equity, low showdown value spots, I need a good reason not to apply a ton of pressure in those spots. And I think when our opponent calls the flop bet, they're not expressing a ton of strength. So it feels like they'd be a good target for that. I don't know if I like it better as a big bet or as a check with the option to raise. Rob, you're unmuted. What do you think?
I'm thinking I wish I would have check raised the flop. because I turned so much equity that it would be such an easy lead again on the turn. But in this case, I think I would probably check and potentially check raise, depending on what they do. You know, if they just check back, I'm fine. But if they bet, I think I need to check raise this particular turn.
Yeah, if we ever do like, hey, I don't understand why position is valuable. Can we just like throw this hand in there? Because like that's like all I'm thinking about is like, okay, how are you going to play this? You're out of position now. You turned equity, and like now how do you handle this spot? like I feel like that's like the ultimate like thing that's holding us back here is like if we were in position, this becomes so much easier to decide how we want to like play out the rest of this hand under different scenarios. The fact that we're out of position puts us in a really tough spot. And honestly, to me, this kind of feels like one of those spots that you're going to like dig into, and it's going to be close EV for a lot of different ways because your hand has some value. It can potentially get some folds, but then you're also going to get called by a lot of stuff that's like just a pair, and you're still not that great against just a pair. Like, so like this to me is like, you're going to get stuck doing a whole lot of different things. Honestly, I think one of the like least used lines here that like I'm somewhat entertaining because of the stage that the tournament that we're in is check calling. Because you can evaluate your spots on rivers and then decide, you know, how do you want to go about it? Because you're not winning with 7 high. And if you just check call and nothing comes in and you still have 7 high, you can just move on to the next hand and still have some chips and like kind of go after that spot. And then if you hit one of your draws, you can shove it all in and you can potentially decide if you want to bluff some of the other draws that maybe came in. So it seems like a really bad line to take just from the normal like chip EV spot, but I think with like ICM and just like preserving your stack, I think it's something we entertain.
So this is the interesting tension that I'm thinking about, because you're choosing, because when you do it, it's very hard to win a big pot later because the draw has to come in and your opponent has to have a second best hand that they're willing to play with for a big pot with. So you're trading this kind of security of being able to play small ball, see how the river goes, and, you know, not lose a lot of chips. But I think the flip side of it is that you're just not as likely to get a lot of value when the chips do come in. Is it that important at this point? Like with ICM being an issue, should we just not worry so much about winning a big pot because it's more important that we don't lose a big pot? Is that part of the dynamic of play?
I mean, winning a big pot is always great, but I think like another thing like about this is like when our draws hit, like how scary are they to our opponent? Like the 3 diamonds can come in on the river here, and it doesn't seem all that scary to our opponent. A club can even come in and it's backdoor club draw. Like how scary is that to our opponent? The 8 completes a lot of gut shots. You know, do you still get called with some of those? So like there's some of that to the situation as well. But yeah, like, I mean, I'm honestly all right winning a 20 big blind pot or whatever, you know, this could end up being. And if I don't win it, I still have 20 bigs. And if I win it, I've got 40 bigs, and like be all right with that type of situation. Because the inverse of taking a situation where I'm either going to have 0 or 60, depending on what the river comes in, is kind of tough this late stage of the tournament.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, are we in the money?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the money. So ICM considerations, you always lose more equity when you lose than you gain equity when you win. You know, we always talk ICM. Every chip you add is worth less than the chips that you lose. So basically, equity-wise, I'm talking money equity, not chip equity here, is definitely calling for the small ball, like Chris was talking about. Betting small. If you normally would bet small, you would check. That type of thing. So if you would normally check, you would probably, or if you'd normally call, you would fold. Those types of dynamics are in play when you're in an ICM spot. Now, I'm assuming that the ICM is not going to be that great because the ladders are probably pretty flat right now. So there's not probably a lot of big jumps if you're 30 away. But the life of your tournament is still at play. So
just to kind of wrap this up before I tell you what happened, how many people here are betting some size, or how many people are checking?
I'm checking.
Checking.
Rob's checking.
Rob's checking. Eric's checking. Jim's
I'm
uncertain.
in the blender. I don't know. I have no idea. If I'm not checking, I'm betting big. Like there's no, I'm not betting small no matter what. I don't think that's the outcome I like for this.
Mm-hmm. So how big are you betting if you're betting?
I think I'm in flow. Flop bets are smaller and turn bets are bigger. So I think we should probably be going something like what's the I want
11 and a half.
11 and a half.
Yeah, so like 7.5 or 8 big blinds or something like that. We want this is a spot to get some fold equity. This is, I guess, what it comes down to me. I want to add some fold equity while we still have a ton of outs and no showdown value. So for me, that means a bigger bet or a check raise.
Yeah. And so let's just talk about that because that is what I did. I bet actually exactly 7.4 big blinds into this. And my thinking around there is we're gonna get folds likely at this point from I think 6s, probably some 9s. And I don't think we're getting jacks to fold, and I don't think we're getting I don't think we're getting like the scary thing is there's like spade combos out there that beat us just by their high card nature. So that's not pleasant. But I still think we're I like the barrel to get some folds, but I'm listening to this and thinking like, checking might make a lot of sense. So for those of you who are checking, Taylor, you were talking about a check call line. Rob, you were talking about a check raise line, right? Are you still sort of thinking those different thoughts about this spot?
It depends on if I check and he bets large, I may just call back. But if he bets small again, then I might just check raise that. It depends how much he bets. It really has a lot to do with that. I think if he bets less than half pot, I think it's a good opportunity to check raise. If he bets more than half pot, it's probably a good opportunity just to call.
Okay. So we bet 7.4 big blinds, leaving us like 13 behind. And no, that's not right. I'm not doing the math right. We bet
18 back or 19
yeah,
back
18 back,
like
right. Yeah, right. But they shove.
No.
So now we have to call. Sorry, we have like 17 back. We have to call 13 to win 50 something, and we've got a lot of potential to do that. We've got a juicy combo draw. We've put ourselves in this spot.
Are we getting the right? First of all, are we getting the right odds? Like assuming that any club or
chip EV, we're getting definitely the right odds.
Yeah,
right. So
you got to think about ICM.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So how does ICM make us shift these decisions? And in this spot where we can leave this hand now with 13 big blinds, which is not terrible. It's not great, but it's not. It's like still. We're not going to be crippled, or we can just try to go for it.
Yeah, I think about how many people are left. If we were 60 people left, like in the money and far away from the final table, I think I'd go with it. If we're, 12, 14 people left approaching a final table, I think we let it go. Where we're at, it makes me a little bit like hesitant in between there. And this is part of the reason why I didn't like the line of betting, because it puts us into the blender here. I don't know. If I make that big bet, I'm probably calling this off. But I know exactly what my outs are, and I know I've got a low percent with it. So
I think it's a strong shove by them, because I think we've demonstrated more strength here, and they, they like they could have a better club draw than we have at this point, even still. And
Unlikely though.
unlikely. No, it's true. It's true.
it definitely,
It would have to have a
It's-
pair.
Yeah.
It'd be
You
like
could
a
definitely
club
have a
draw with a jack.
yeah, their clubs have pairs. Their spades though have a lot of like draws that potentially have better straights than us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And to Taylor's earlier point about position and applying pressure, like this is such a better spot if you're the one shoving and putting them in the blender, right? Like you love life here when you're the one shoving. If you were going to check and you knew they were going to bet and you could shove over the top, it's such a different spot than having to bet call for the same amount of chips. It's always just so much better to be aggressive here. Eric, you've got something to add, I think.
I think your table kind of helps a lot too, because if you think you can spin up 13 big blinds on your table,
Mhm.
it might be worth the fold and just staying alive. Whereas if you think everybody at your table is equal class or even higher class, you might need to gamble a little bit.
Yeah. Rob?
I think it's a call all the way. I probably would have taken a different line in this spot. I probably would have bet or checked, hoping that they bet and then jammed over the top of them. Again, now you're gaining so much fold equity. So if they have one of those, nine of hearts, type hands, they're going to fold it. If they have, let's say, they're not going to have very many flush draws that have a pair already. So if they have a flush draw, a spade draw, what do they have? A six of spades?
Yeah.
Eight, six of
Ace,
spades,
six of
maybe?
spades might, yeah.
Yeah, king, six of spades, maybe something like that. The problem that you have is you're not beating any of their bluffs. They could be bluffing with whatever they're bluffing with. You're probably not beating because you got 7 high, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even their bluffs, you're not beating. So the only thing you can do is add some more pressure by going check, raise all in. Now you're stuck in that situation where I don't know that you can't call. I think you have to call here. You have so much equity. This is for your tournament life, but so be it.
And I think sometimes if they are shoving their draws here, then even if they have a higher card in their hand than you do, you probably have 6 more outs because your pairs will probably win. If you actually hit a 7 or a 5 here, that's going to win a non-trivial percentage of the time, at least against that part of the ring. Now, it doesn't help if it also brings in the straight that they're looking for or whatever. But interestingly, just because of the way that this is played out, like I don't think they ever have a jack that they didn't bet, that they didn't like raise your flop bet at the way this came out. So if they, I'm probably just buffling up and putting them in. This is a hard game. I don't like
I'm going to throw my vote in for fold. One, to disagree with Chris on every street so far in this round. Because, I know Chris. I know he called here. Two, as a punishment to yourself, you should fold here because you misplayed the turn and probably the flop as well. So you need to fold to punish yourself so you can get there. And three, I honestly think with ICM, it's probably a better decision to fold here because we probably need 26, 28%, somewhere in that range in terms of chip EV. And I would guess in this spot, we probably are, sitting probably around 30 or so. And I know ICM is going to change that equation and stuff. And I think ICM wise, this probably would be a fold. So 2 joking reasons. And one, I think this is a borderline actual fold.
Well, I will have you know that I didn't just call; I rolled for it here.
Oh,
I gave more weight to folding. I will have you know.
amazing!
But I
love
rolled
this.
high, so I called, and I'm glad I did because it was the 8 of clubs.
Oh,
Straight flush, baby.
Ooh, yeah.
And
well played.
so,
In that case, well played.
yeah, well
Chris.
played,
It was
right?
the 8
Well,
o'clock.
well
Yeah, well
played,
played.
right? What does
No,
Taylor
nicely
know?
done. Amazing.
what were you up against though?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
what-
no,
yeah.
no. I want to get your thoughts about what do you think villain shows down here?
I mean, I think they do this as wide as like Jack 10 offsuit, just like top pair. I think they can have a ton of things here. Even including all the draws and stuff that we've talked about, like Queen 10 and stuff like that. But in terms of like made hand for value, I think they can do this as low as like Jack 10 offsuit.
King
Person-
9.
See, that's relatively close. Is that what it was?
Okay.
King 9?
It was King 9.
Yeah, I was thinking of 9 because I think the Jack you hear about it on the flop. And they did call a 3x open, so they shouldn't have like Jack 4 offsuit here. You know what I mean? Like if they have a Jack, it's got a Jack and a piece of this, either an overcard or a draw. I thought for sure it was going to be like 8-10 or, something like, well, yeah, 8-10 just kind of jumps out at it, or like Queen 8 of clubs or something like that.
Was it
So-
King 9 off?
We had were the suits at all
King of
interesting?
Hearts,
'Cause
9 of diamonds.
nothing. So I think they just decided that you were full of it when you right, like, because they're do you like their shove? So let's talk about their shove a little bit here. So they're definitely denying you equity, right? And here, Taylor, what were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think it's totally fine just because of the blind versus blind dynamic. They don't hold a single club or spade in their hand, which I think
Right.
benefits them a ton because then that means Chris has a lot of those draws. They're doing pretty decent versus just draws. They're concerned about a Jack, which I'm trying to like think back and be like, does a Jack play this hand this way? I think it potentially does from you. So I think they do have to be concerned about that. But like, what are our strong Jacks look like in terms of opening this big pre? So it could get into a leveling war, I think, in terms of like, what is your opponent doing in this specific spot with Jack 9 offsuit? Are they raising 3x or Jack 8 offsuit or, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I think they had the kind of hand that we wanted them to have when we applied the pressure on the turn, right? Like that was maybe they'll fold a 9. I guess they're pretty high. Yeah. Interesting. So how often do you roll, Chris?
Pretty rarely. This was a spot I felt really unsure about. Like I felt like, so here's the thing. Now knowing this, like, because I really thought that big of a turn bet would get rid of most 9x. I really did. And so knowing that this player can take that line against this, I think I like that. I think the turn, I like a check on the turn. In retrospect, for a lot of reasons we've talked about, and maybe even this opponent specific read I already had, that they're a very aggressive player that puts a lot of like both pre-flop pressure on, and they take a lot of aggressive actions. It makes our life really hard when we sort of out of position give them the opportunity to put the final hammer down. So, but yeah, I will say I was surprised to see the 9 in this spot, because I think you do open your. I mean, I do think I can have Ace Jack, King Jack, Queen Jack that are probably Jack, all of those that are probably playing this way, So it's
Well,
Are you
and
limping?
I think
You're limping
you can
pre with those?
obviously.
I didn't limp pre though.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's
You
the thing.
raised pre. Never mind. That's right.
And,
I'm sorry.
because you did it with 5-7, I think you can also have Jack 9, 9-6. Like you can have any piece of this, which is, I guess, their argument for the shove as well, is that you do have a lot of pair plus draw hands or just draw hands, and you don't have a lot of when considered as part of your entire range, even though you may have a fair number of combos that are one pair or better on this board, they're still a pretty small part of your overall range. So
true, very true.
I do see that. Yeah, interesting. I still don't know. I don't know how I'm so confused about so many things now. I don't know how I feel about. I don't know how I feel about the way they played it. And yeah, I still think if we could like say for sure that they were going to bet if we check to them on the turn, then I like the check raise for sure. But we just don't get to be sure about that kind of stuff.
The funny thing is, if we check raise and he folds, we don't make as much money.
Yeah, right. Right.
So we played it differently
So we
than
got
we
max.
may have.
We got
And-
max value.
And we got max value, yeah.
If that's the case, always go all in.
Yeah,
And
always
just
go
hope the
all in.
cards go in your favor.
Very good point.
I did look it up because I was curious. Assuming clubs and straight outs are clean, we have a very clean, like 34% chance to win against almost all hands that they have there. So I was a little bit underestimating like how much equity we had. I think I said something like 28%, but 34 is decently better and starts to tip that equation. But again, you're getting in a spot a third of the time you're going to win, 2/3 you're going to lose. So
Right. Yep.
it's pretty clean because all their draws are going to be better than you currently, and you really need to hit one of those outs.
Well, I'm just as confused as ever, but I really enjoyed the conversation. So this was a good hand to bring, Chris, and just goes to show if you play hands that only have 1 5 in them, you can get into some pretty sticky spots.
Yeah, you really want 2 5s. 2 5s are always better.
That's really
then you know what to do all the time.
yeah. That
Would you have
makes
won
for a
this
lot of
hand
easy
if that was the case?
No.
No.
Well, no, but if you had 2 5s, then the river would have been a 5.
Yeah.
So it would have, who knows? Who knows how this whole thing would have played out? All right. Well, any parting thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap this baby up? No. All right. Well, then, without any further ado, thank you, Chris Jones, Taylor Moss, Rob Washam, and Eric Anderson for your insight tonight. Thanks to the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And thanks to you, the listeners. We couldn't do it without you. And we'll see you again next week here on the Rec Poker Podcast. Have a good night, everybody.